And welcome back to Bengal Bites, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from one fan's real, honest perspective. I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 61. This is the Week 6 recap episode where we're going to break down the Sunday Night Football win. That's right, the Bengals got back in the win category with a big, much-needed win over the New York Football Giants in prime time. Lots to get excited about and to be optimistic and hopeful about now that the season is at least somewhat back on track. Can't say it's completely saved yet. They're 2-4, but a win is much better than a loss, and we're going to break it all down in this episode. We're going to, as we always do, start off with all the positive things because naturally my personality tends to skew towards criticism and trying to pick holes in things. But no, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. A win is a win, and we're going to take this one, all right? Like, it wasn't that much fun of a game to watch. I'm trying to sell it to you. Come on, stay with me here. They were on TV, they were trying to sell it like, boy, this game is pretty weird, huh? The Bengals won this game 17-7. So obviously, a game that ends 17-7, not a lot of points scored. It was what they call a defensive battle, very gritty, grind it out type of defensive battle. Or you could say this game was boring as shit. It was not very good, but like there were some highlights in there. So we're going to talk about the highlights and everything to get excited about in this game. And then we'll go through and tell the story of the game from my own fan perspective. I'm not boots on the ground. I'm not a reporter. I'm not trying to be in the locker room. So there's lots of other podcasts out there that do a great job. Go check out some of those. Brief aside, before we even get started, if you haven't already, go listen to Dan Hord's most recent episode of Bengal Booth Podcast. Much better podcast, where he did an episode of the, what do you call it? The player underneath the pads, fun facts. Yeah, he did fun facts with Lawrence Guy, who is the guy, 14th year in the league, signed off of his couch to play for the Bengals. Luckily for the Bengals, one of the positives was they didn't have Lawrence Guy playing in this game. They had their defense back at full strength. All their starters were back on the defensive line. And so the biggest positive of this entire game was how well the Bengals defense played, dominated the Giants, held them to 7 points for the whole game. Not going to win a lot of points, or not going to win a lot of games, only scoring 7 points. So great job by the Bengals defense, and specifically on that defensive line, B.J. Hill, who was drafted by the New York Giants, and the Bengals acquired him, if you'll remember a few seasons ago, in that Super Bowl season. Bengals, right before the season started, made a trade with the Giants. Billy Price, former first-round pick from Ohio State, who played at center and was terrible from snap number 1, traded him for B.J. Hill between the Giants. B.J. Hill turned out to be a great player, and Billy Price is out of the league right now. Part of that is due to some kind of medical issue Billy Price was having, but he wasn't really having a lot of success, not on the Bengals anyway. So obviously one of the best trades the Bengals have ever done in franchise history. And B.J. Hill going back to his former team, he was obviously very excited. He said he had to control his emotions, keep his emotions in check, because he was maybe a little bit too excited. But he played his you-know-what's off in this game. Like, at least 3 batted passes at the line of scrimmage by B.J. Hill. It was kind of weird. It was almost like Daniel Jones didn't see B.J. Hill. I don't know if B.J. Hill put on like the cloak of invisibility before he got out there, because Daniel Jones almost acted like he was trying to throw the ball through B.J. Hill's body sometime. There was one play where the ball hit B.J. Hill directly in the face mask, so he has the helmet on, so it didn't like break his nose, but straight into B.J. Hill's face. That's where Daniel Jones tried to throw it. We'll get to Daniel Jones when we get to some more of the negative comments. I mean, it depends on how you think of it. For the Bengals, it was a positive, but sticking on the positives, B.J. Hill, great plays by him. He was blowing up the run game. the Giants' offensive line didn't really seem to have an answer for him. Sheldon Rankins, didn't hear too much about it, but just the fact that Sheldon Rankins was active and playing in this game was a positive, just because he's been out with that more severe hamstring injury. B.J. Hill was back last week from his hamstring injury. Now we got Sheldon Rankins back, but one of the biggest plays in the game. Well, let's talk about the only notable play really for the Bengals that anybody is going to remember from this game at all was first series of the game. Bengals get the ball. They're driving down the field, and looking back on the tape, coming into this game, the Giants played the Seahawks right before this, and Geno Smith is the quarterback for the Seahawks. Geno Smith picked up a lot of yards running the ball, where the Giants defense didn't really account for him, and they let him out of the pocket, and he was able to scramble and pick up like 25, 30 yards a couple times. So that was going to be something to watch. I don't know if I mentioned it in the preview episode, but just because Joe Burrow is probably more athletic and faster than Geno Smith. Geno Smith has, been in the league for 15 years or close to that at this point, so he's not as fast as he used to be. Joe Burrow is still a spry mid-20-year-old, so he's got wheels. He was able to pick up a first down. Joe Burrow was able to pick up a first down early in this drive on a scramble similar where he got out and picked up about 10 or 15 yards. Then a few plays later, Joe Burrow, it was a called pass play. He saw there was a blitz coming from the offensive left, Giants right. They were overloading that one side of the field, and everybody in the defensive secondary was going to be playing man-to-man coverage. Usually what that means is when the defender's playing man-to-man coverage, they're going to turn their backs to the quarterback and run and look at the guy that they're guarding. So they can't account that, they can't have eyes in the back of their head and see what the quarterback's doing behind them. Joe Burrow was able to recognize this before the snap of the ball, and so as soon as he got the ball, he caught it, planted his back foot in the ground, and didn't even fake like he was going to pass it at all. He just took it, ran straight up the right side, past all the defensive linemen, because they didn't have anybody really covering that right side. No linebackers, no safeties, nobody accounting for the right side, only one guy, and that guy got blocked. Burrow ran right past him, and all the people in coverage were covering their guy. They didn't see Joe Burrow come out of the pocket, start running down the field. Joe Burrow was able to scramble for the longest run of his career, 47-yard touchdown run, that put the Bengals on top 7-0, and that's exactly the way that the Bengals needed to start off the game. Start off strong with a touchdown so they can get ahead and play from a lead, and they didn't really extend the lead beyond that too much, but longest play of Joe Burrow's career in terms of running the ball, did a great job of extending. He said after the game, they were like, well, were you kind of watching that? There was one safety in the middle of the field who was late to react to get over. He couldn't hit Joe Burrow out of bounds before he scored the touchdown at the goal line. And they were asking Joe, the reporters asked after the game, were you concerned about that? He was like, nah, I knew he wasn't going to catch me. So, I knew I had the touchdown. I just had to get in there. So Joe Burrow showing off the wheels. They tracked him on his GPS transponder that he got up to 19.8 miles per hour on that run. Probably the fastest run that Joe Burrow's had in a while. And not quite 20 miles an hour, but pretty close. To put it in some kind of perspective, in the 2 touchdowns that Jamar Chase had against the Ravens last week, the one catch and run for 70 yards and then the long touchdown catch he had in the end zone from Burrow over the right side, both of those Jamar Chase recorded speed was about 21.4 to 21.5 miles an hour. Derrick Henry also got up to about 21.5 miles an hour on his long run against the Bengals. So Joe Burrow is about 1.5 miles an hour slower than Jamar Chase. So he said he's going to have to give him a little bit of crap about how he didn't quite get into 20, but maybe he'll get there one day. But still, great play by Joe Burrow, and that was all instinct by him. It was like Zach Taylor said after the game, he called a pass play. It was designed to be a pass play. And Joe Burrow just had the instinct to recognize defense isn't going to be able to stop him if he breaks out to the right side, and that's exactly what he did. He had the speed and athleticism to get it done. And Joe Burrow's done that since he was a little kid. That's the history they always talked about ever since he was back in elementary school, middle school, he was playing quarterback and they couldn't stop the quarterback sneak. So he had plenty of, 70 or 80 yard touchdowns back when he was on the schoolyard, just like this. He, obviously never in the NFL on prime time did he get to do a quarterback sneak, but it was basically a adult Joe Burrow playing a kid's game. Exactly what this play was. And it was great because as soon as he scored, they had the NBC cameraman on the ground putting the camera right in Joe Burrow's face. And the look on Joe Burrow's face after he scored it was great because he would turn around and he's flexing and really feeling himself after this touchdown. He's got this sneer, like his upper corner of his lip is curled up to the left side. He looks just like Billy Idol. He's got the frosted tips in his hair. It's too bad you can't take your helmet off after you score a touchdown anymore, because he should have taken his helmet off, showed off the hair, the frosted tips, and had that sneer going, looking just like Billy. What a nice day for a white wedding indeed on this touchdown run. So kicking it off, and really that took the Giants crowd out of it from the get-go. I was really, not to get into the negatives too early, but one of the things that I noticed about this broadcast was they didn't show very much of the Giants crowd at all. I didn't get any sense of atmosphere from the game. For whatever reason, NBC had like all these, they do all these cartoon animations and little graphics and things like that, but they didn't have a lot of, camera angles of just fans cheering or doing anything. Maybe it was because they were afraid that Giants fans were going to be booing and giving them like the finger or something, so they didn't want to. You didn't hear a lot of music. That's maybe a positive. I'll say that's a positive, is there wasn't a ton of noise and sirens and cacophony and all that kind of stuff. So at least the Giants game was nice and quiet, not too much cheering. So it was a nice, pleasant, calm, soothing game of football. Just nice back and forth, nobody make any big plays, nothing to cheer about. Just you could, read a book and watch this football game. But one of the other things that stood out to me as a positive in this game, surprisingly, was the special teams for the Bengals. Last week, they had a little miscue holding the field goal where Ryan Rico wasn't able to quite get the ball down cleanly off of a little bit of an errant snap from Cal Adamitis. So the kick to win the game in overtime against the Ravens last week from Evan McPherson went wide left. This week, they were able to make all their extra points, all their field goals, no issues with the snap or hold or anything like that. And they did a great job in the punting game. And there were a lot of punts for the Bengals. Not like previous weeks where they were scoring a lot of touchdowns and not having to do any or much of any punting at all. Ryan Rico was pretty busy in this game. Let me double check his statistics. Ryan Rico had 6 punts in this game, average of 46.3, 1 touchback, long of 57 with 4 out of 6 inside the 20. And he had a couple that were near the 10 when they landed, either as fair catches or special teams ace Tyson Anderson, number 26, making great special teams plays to make the tackle on the returner before they were able to pick up any return yards. So if I check the Giants' returns, Amir Smith-Marset so on those 6 punts, only 2 returns and only 1 total return yard. So an average of half of a yard per return. So every time he tried to return it, Tyson Anderson was tackling him basically immediately, or it was a fair catch. So great job out of the Bengals special teams on 6 punts to basically allow 0 or 1 return yard. Great job as a unit. Also, no kick returns. I think it was probably mostly touchbacks. Charlie Jones had 1 kick return for 1 yard. But yeah, special teams was another bright spot. So a good job of defensively. I'd say the defensive secondary, the cornerbacks particularly, they had some good plays and some not so great plays. There were some pass breakups by Cam Taylor-Britt and DJ Turner and Mike Hilton. That's another player that the Bengals got back, Mike Hilton. He had been out last week, and his presence probably was missed more than we realized because they had Jalen Davis and some other players in there. And they also had to account for Dax Hill being out in this game. But Mike Hilton made a big play in the run game and the pass game. On a critical fourth down early in the game, Mike Hilton got a hand on the ball and broke up the pass so the Giants couldn't pick up a first down and continue their drive. And then late in the game, in a critical drive where the Giants were trying to get back into the game, 4th and short, DJ Turner made a great play to get in front of Darius Slayton, break up the pass. Similar type of scenario to stop the Giants and prevent them from scoring any points and trying to get back into the game. So defensive secondary by the Bengals stepped up and did a good job of not letting the Giants receivers go crazy. And one of the other positives going into the game was that the Giants were going to be without a lot of their key weapons or key players on pretty much every side of the ball. So they had their starting running back and starting number 1 wide receiver in Malik Neighbors, wide receiver, and then Devin Singletary were out for this game. So that made it a little bit easier for the Bengals defense. The Giants weren't able to get much going in the running game in the first half especially. So maybe they were missing Devin Singletary in the run. And then pass-wise, maybe they were missing Malik Neighbors, their number 1 receiver. He had 35 catches, even though he missed week 5. So he only played 4 games, had 35 catches. Obviously, he was their number 1 target. But if you want to put it positive, Daniel Jones couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. It didn't matter what receiver they had out there. Daniel Jones wasn't going to be able to complete the pass to them. So they could have Malik Neighbors, they could have Jerry Rice. I don't think it would have helped the Giants in this game that much. Offensively, probably the best producer was T. Higgins. 7 targets, 7 catches for 77 yards. Lucky number 7 for T on this night. No touchdowns, long of 24, but just a lot of great possession catches. Again, where just T is so big. You forget how, he's just freakishly like a basketball player out there playing football. And even though Andre Yosevich, I have high hopes for him, I don't think he's going to be a T. Higgins replacement anytime soon. He's still, it's just so impressive. Andre, it's he's big and strong and fast and all that stuff. And when he tries to run, he gets tackled and they take him down immediately. But when somebody tries to tackle T. Higgins, it takes 4 or 5 guys to bring him down. And they're not that far away from each other in size, but just something about T. Higgins, he's just so big and strong, it's crazy. So he was a problem for the Giants. They didn't really have an answer for him, but really nobody does. Same way, the Giants did a pretty good job of covering Jamar Chase. I think they had this guy, Flott, was maybe a teammate of Jamar Chase at LSU, and he was covering him for the most part. They were actually had an interesting strategy of one guy would cover Jamar Chase on 1st and 2nd down, and then they'd bring in a different guy on 3rd down to guard him. Maybe just doing a rotation to keep each other fresh. That's an interesting strategy if you do a tag team of guarding a guy one-on-one, but with different guys every play. But Jamar Chase, okay game in this one. 6 targets, 5 catches, 72 yards, no touchdowns, long of 33. He had a great 33-yard catch where it was a scrambled drill where Joe Burrow was in the backfield, obviously going back to pass, and he was under pressure, as he was quite a few times in this game. I think he was hurried 10 times at least at one point in this game. 3 sacks, a number of hits. I think at least 6 hits. I'll have to check the stats on the hits. 7 quarterback hits for the Giants. So they were definitely getting to Joe Burrow. But on this play, Jamar Chase did a good job of just uncovering, finding a soft spot in the defense where there was not going to be a defender. Joe Burrow did a perfect job of dropping it over the defender's head right where Jamar Chase was going to be. This was a situation where, unlike the previous 2 games where there was a miscommunication, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase weren't mentally on the same wavelength. This game, they were on the perfect wavelength. They figured out what each other wanted and executed it perfectly. Another play that worked out one of the best plays of the night for the Bengals. That wasn't how it was schemed up, drawn up. That's not how they wanted it or expected the play to turn out, but the result was better than they planned on. And I'm going to stay positive, but just to point out, both of those plays, the long touchdown run from Joe Burrow and the long catch to Jamar Chase, were not something that Zach Taylor had any influence in or any input in, or his coaching had nothing to do with the success of those plays. Those plays were a product, most like 95%, of just the skill and natural instinct of those particular players, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And maybe like 1 or 2% had to do with the preparation from the coaching staff. My point being, you could get rid of the current head coach who's calling the plays, replace him with any other coach, and the results would probably be pretty similar. So the credit for this game, for this win, I would put most of the credit to the defense, the defensive coordinator. This is the best game Lou Anarumo might have coached for the Bengals, because at the end of the game, they put up a statistic. This was the first game in something like 75 games that the Bengals held a team to 7 points or less or something like that. Like, I can't remember the last time the Bengals defense had a shutout, but the Bengals defense had given up, double digits. It was the first time the Bengals didn't give up double-digit points in like 5 years. So maybe the first season they had a better game. That game against the Browns, I don't know. But this is one of the best games Lou Anarumo had. And they mentioned how Lou is from Staten Island, so he's back close to home. You know, the Meadowlands is technically in New Jersey, but it's a few miles outside of New York City. So technically New Jersey, but Coach Lou, there's a homecoming. They said that he had like over 100 family members at the game in attendance to watch. So I'm sure he was very excited and motivated to impress everybody and not go out there and get 40 points put up on him by the New York Giants. So great win for Coach Lou. He definitely got a game ball out of this one. But like I said, I wouldn't give Zach Taylor a game ball. He said after the game, like a lot of anything he took the responsibility for, as he usually does. But he was talking about, the offense couldn't get things going, and I got to do a better job calling the plays. He said that at halftime when they interviewed him. They were like, "What's up, coach?" He said, just can't get in a rhythm, had some sacks, and that's on me. I got to do a better job calling the plays. And he didn't really do any better job calling the plays. They didn't really have a lot of success offensively, but it did enough to win the game and not make plays to lose the game. And Joe Burrow, if we look at his statistics, weren't especially impressive. Only 208 yards passing, no touchdowns, 4 sacks for 25 yards, passer rating of 89.6. He was 19 of 28, so I can't do the math in my head on that one. 68% roughly. Not overly impressive numbers, but a QBR rating of 87.8. So in the key situations, but let's not forget, Joe Burrow was also their leading rusher in the game. 4 carries, 55 yards, 1 touchdown, long of 47. So the 47-yard touchdown run made up for a lot of any deficiencies he may have had in the passing game. But the biggest thing was no turnovers, no fumbles, no interceptions. And in critical moments, he was able to pick up first downs, like on 3rd and long. That's the thing that separates, mediocre quarterbacks from great quarterbacks, is in those key pressure moments when you need to get a first down, do you make the plays or not? And Joe Burrow was making the plays, and then on the other side of the field, the Giants quarterback was not making the plays. And it was just a stark contrast between the two, because the numbers, both of them had about 205 yards passing, but Daniel Jones had an interception, and on 3rd down and sometimes on 4th down, he was not making good plays. He wasn't making good decisions. And it was just night and day. And not only night and day difference between Joe Burrow and Daniel Jones, but all the previous quarterbacks that the Bengals defense had to play. It's like when the Bengals were playing up against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, obviously Lamar Jackson, 2-time league MVP, amazing athlete, amazing player, made the Bengals defense look pretty bad. But then all of a sudden, when the Bengals defense is at full strength and they're playing against Daniel Jones, suddenly the Bengals defense looks pretty good. So I think it was part of the fact that Lamar Jackson last week was so good, had one of the best games I've seen in a long time. I don't know if that was one of the best games of his career, because sometimes Lamar Jackson can just do that on a regular basis. But just going between seeing like Jaden Daniels tear up the Bengals defense for the Commanders and Lamar Jackson, and then even Andy Dalton to some extent looked better than Daniel Jones for the Giants. So I don't know what it is. I felt all the frustration that a New York Giants fan must have been feeling, because I'm a Bengals fan, but I'm also a fan of football. And I guess I'll transition to a slightly more negative note. Like, I was so mad watching Daniel Jones play in this game. He was so terrible. Like, just as a football fan, it was so frustrating to watch Daniel Jones lose the game, basically, for the Giants. The Giants' defense was sacking Joe Burrow. They were getting pressure. Every time the Bengals tried to set up any kind of a deep pass or anything on offense, Giants' defense made a play. They forced fumbles. They were in Joe Burrow's lap all night, but the offense couldn't get anything going. They had to resort to trying a bunch of fourth downs. They converted a lot of fourth downs, but you can't live on going for fourth down every drive. So they didn't convert a couple fourth downs. Giants missed 2 field goals that could have kept them in this game. They could have tied the game at one point, missed a field goal, and they were not exceptionally long field goals, and they were like 45 or so yards. But MetLife Stadium is so windy, and the wind swirls in there, that you kind of could see the ball hooking to the left and to the right when he was missing these kicks. And to be fair, on Monday Night Football, the night after this game, the New York Jets played with Aaron Rodgers, and they had a couple of missed field goals in that game as well. So it's a tough stadium to kick in, but that just makes it more impressive that Evan McPherson did not miss any of his kicks. But luckily for the Bengals, they didn't have to try to kick anything. I think Evan's kick was inside 40 yards. Not that long, but Giants just didn't do anything to help themselves. Every time, and then the other thing was, every time the Giants seemed like they could get any kind of progress, penalty flag. Penalty flag on the Giants. They had a 60-yard catch and run to Darius Slayton that got called back. Illegal offensive lineman downfield, because they were doing these run-pass options pretty much the whole night, where it's up to the quarterback to decide whether he wants to hand it off to the running back for a run play or keep it and throw it, and so it's a run or a pass option. But the offensive linemen don't know whether you're going to run it or throw it, so they kind of have to block it as it's going to be a run, and then if it's a pass, trying not to get too far downfield. But Andrew Thomas, he got caught in no man's land where he blocked it like a run, but it was actually a pass, negated the whole thing. And there were just holding penalties, similar penalties like that, where anytime the Giants got anything going, they shot themselves in the foot. They had another early in the first, when was it? I'll look here at the drive chart. So the Giants' second drive, they got 9 plays, 48 yards, got into scoring position, and at this point they're down 7-0, still in the first quarter. So they're trying to tie the game up, respond to the Bengals. It's been a couple of punts, no blood in between them. But then Daniel Jones, he was scrambling around, and BJ Hill is breaking free and rushing right at Daniel Jones, straight at him, in his sight line. Daniel Jones can see him. And instead of taking a sack, He tries to throw the ball away. They said he wasn't trying to necessarily throw it to a receiver, but just trying to throw the ball out of the back of the end zone. Intentionally throw it away and, just have incomplete pass. What actually happened instead was BJ Hill was like 2 feet in front of him. So Daniel Jones, when he went to throw, his arm went into BJ Hill's body, and he got, halfway through his throwing motion. The ball popped up in the air. Jermaine Pratt, again, like a Von Bell interception against the Panthers. Jermaine Pratt, BJ Hill's former college roommate, made the easy interception that gave the ball back to the Bengals offense. They ended up punting it after that, but an opportunity, golden opportunity for the Giants to tie up the game or at least get some points. Daniel Jones makes a terrible decision to try to force an incomplete, like even if he had thrown the ball successfully, it was just going to be incomplete anyway. So late, I'm sure he had a receiver open that he missed. I think the running back was open in the flat, but even still, just a bad decision to throw it and give up the ball. But the other thing about Daniel Jones was he was so late in his decision making, or so slow in his decision making, especially throwing the ball. Now, and the other thing was his best skill was running. That's never good if you're supposed to be the franchise quarterback and the best thing you can do is pick up like 5 yards on a quarterback sneak. They're doing a lot of quarterback sneaks, but whenever he had to throw the ball, the results weren't good. He was throwing a lot of bullet passes, and they were trying to compare him to Josh Allen on the broadcast. And Chris Collinsworth is going on and on about, oh my God, Daniel Jones tore his ACL last year, and he went through rehab, and can you believe he's out here running around? Like, guys with modern medicine, they come back from ACLs all the time, and if he wasn't healthy, he shouldn't be playing on the field. So I don't know why it was so remarkable to Chris Collinsworth that this guy tore his ACL, but he's back out there running around. Can you believe it? Again, it's not a good sign when your quarterback that you're paying $40 million a year plus is running around and can't complete a simple pass 5 yards away from him. And Josh Allen, in comparison, he can run around and do all that stuff, but when he throws the ball, he hits guys in the chest or in the face, and they catch it. When Daniel Jones runs around, it's okay, but when he throws it, he throws it at guys' feet or over their head or into the stands. He wasn't hitting people in the chest or in the face, except for BJ Hill. So, Daniel Jones, I get it now. Like his record in primetime games is 1-14 now in his career. Unbelievable. Like, how is that even possible that you could be so bad in prime time? Obviously, it's not all on him. It's a team game, and sometimes it just works out that way. But I felt like the Giants, as a team, outside of the special teams, obviously they could have made those field goals that would have changed the complexion completely. But even then, it never felt like Daniel Jones was going to make any kind of a play to give the Giants any kind of a chance to win the game. And the Bengals were giving them every opportunity. It was like they were leaving the door wide open. They're like, okay, we're going to get the one touchdown from Joe Burrow to start the drive. But then after that, here's a look at how the Bengals drive went throughout the course of the game. Bengals went touchdown, punt, 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 fumble. So they got sick of punting after, what was that, like 5 or 6 in a row? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 punts in a row, and then they went to halftime. Then after the Bengals defense stopped the Giants on 4th down, because the Giants had 0 points in the first half. But we'll get to that. But, okay, so Bengals went touchdown, punt, 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 fumble, field goal, punt, touchdown, end of the game. That doesn't sound that great throughout most NFL games to have that many punts, a couple touchdowns, 1 field goal. But on the contrary, it sounds pretty good when you compare it to the Giants, who went punt, interception, punt, 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 fail on 4th down, touchdown, missed field goal, another fail on 4th down, another missed field goal. horrible ineptitude by the Giants offense. And they all said after the game, obviously, if you score 7 points, you're not going to win most games. They had another statistic that the Bengals were 1-166 when they scored 10 points or less in a game. And because they were saying at the very end of the game, it was 10-7. Bengals had the ball towards the end of the fourth quarter, and it was looking like the Bengals were going to win the game with only 10 points. It was going to be a 10-7 win. At the very end, Chase Brown ended up scoring a touchdown, which, from a strategic point of view, was another coaching error by Zach Taylor, because the only way that the Giants had any chance to win the game at all was if they got the ball back. And the only way to give the ball back to the Giants would be to score a touchdown, or score at all. So instead of scoring a touchdown, Chase Brown probably should just have picked up the first down and then slid down, take a knee, so that they can just run the rest of the clock out. They don't need that extra touchdown. But right before that, Chase Brown had fumbled. It was almost a disaster. The Bengals were trying to run the clock out at the very end of the game. It's 10-7. They've got the ball. Chase Brown gets hit, fumbles the ball. Ball's on the ground, bouncing around. Giants look like they dive on the ball, and then as the whole mass of bodies is scrambling around, we see the ball squirt out underneath somebody, trickle out of bounds. Nobody's able to keep possession. Ball stays with the Bengals. So it was almost, again, another opportunity. The Bengals tried to let the Giants get back in the game. Like, hey, are you sure? We're going to leave the door open for you if you want to come back. Like, we'll leave it cracked. We'll leave it cracked a little bit. And if you decide you want to start scoring some points, it's up to you. I'm just saying. They tried everything possible to let the Giants back into this game. But the Giants didn't fall for it. They weren't having any of it. They're like, nope, we are losing this game for sure. We're not falling for that shit. So, great win by the Bengals to get back on the winning track. We'll take it. And they've got another chance to get an AFC win. The Bengals' 2 wins so far this season have come against NFC opponents. The Bengals play in the AFC, and they need wins against AFC opponents to get into the playoffs. It matters for their standings, their division, their conference, if they can get some wins against their direct competition for the playoffs. And they have a chance to do that against their arch rival Cleveland Browns this coming week. But we'll have plenty of time to get into that in the next episode. I'm trying to think if there was anything else interesting or noteworthy that happened in this game. There were a few penalties on the Bengals. Cornerbacks DJ Turner and Cam Taylor-Britt both got pass interference penalties. The DJ Turner penalty was in the end zone, pass interference, where he basically body slammed Darius Slayton before the ball even got there. And that was a situation where Darius Slayton hit the back of his head on the turf. He got evaluated for a concussion, but he stayed in the game. But tough hit, tough play, and that set up the Giants' 1-yard touchdown to, I think it was a rookie, Tyrone Tracy, their running back, that kept him in the game. Cam Taylor-Britt had another pass interference, kind of similar to Dejon Anthony against the Chiefs. He came over the back of a guy. Chris Collinsworth was trying to say in real time, it didn't look that bad, but then when they showed the replay, I was like, yeah, he got there at least half a second too early, jumping over the back of the guy. So some not so great plays, but overall, pretty good performance by the Bengals defense. The only thing that I was thinking, watching the special teams, seeing Tyson Anderson making those good tackles on the punts, it kind of makes me think, oh, well, if he's so good making tackles on the open field on the special teams, how come he can't get in there on regular defense? Geno Stone and Von Bella are the starters, and everybody always talks about Jordan Battle because he was a 3rd-round pick, and he went to Alabama, so he's got big-name school or big-time school recognition or whatever. So a lot of people are like, oh, they should put in Jordan Battle. But what about Tyson Anderson? He looks pretty good out there on special teams, but maybe it's one of those things of, since he's able to focus just on special teams and not so much on defense, if he was actually playing on regular defense, he wouldn't be as good on special teams. So can't be greedy. You got to trust the coaches and their plan. And if they just want to use Tyson Anderson on special teams, he's effective at that. I'll give him that. So we'll have to see how the snap counts play out. The defensive line, not only did they get their starters back, but they also got McKinley Jackson, Chris Jenkins, the rookies who had been injured. They were also back. So more of the rotation along the defensive line we had expected to see, instead of guys like J. Tufele and Lawrence Guy and Zach Carter, who isn't even on the team anymore. They got rid of those guys. Now they have some actual players out there. So that is giving me signs for optimism. Hopefully the Bengals are able to keep this trend going for the rest of the season. I guess in the negatives category, I mentioned Joe Burrow got hit a lot. Part of that was some of the offensive line. They were giving up some pressure to the Giants defensive line, who lead the NFL in sacks coming into this game. So obviously that's a strength of their team already. Even though they were without Kayvon Thibodeau, former first-round pick, they had Azeez Ojulari, who was a second-round pick for the Giants, and he showed up. I think he had 2.5 or 3 sacks. He had one play where it looked like he had Joe Burrow in the grasp in the back of the end zone, and somehow Joe Burrow was able to spin out of it, get away, and just throw it away for an incomplete pass instead of a safety or a fumble or something like that. I think Ojulari, Chris Collinsworth was going on about how, he pulled up because he didn't want to get roughing the passer penalty. It looked like Ojulari thought the ball came out onto the ground because after he hit Joe Burrow, he started looking around behind him on the ground like he thought there was a fumble or something. But Joe Burrow still had the ball, so he just ran away and threw it out into the sidelines. But Ojulari was going up against Amarius Mims, the rookie right tackle. Thankfully, Amarius Mims made it through the game and didn't have to get carted off with any kind of an injury. He didn't seem any worse for the wear. But he gave up a little pressure. Some of it was there was one sack Ojulari got because I don't know what happened on the play, but Alex Kappa just fell flat on his back at right guard next to Amarius Mims. So Ojulari, there was a big wide open lane where he could just step over the top of Alex Kappa's body and get in and sack Joe Burrow. Nothing that Mims can really do on that play where you got a guy laying on the ground next to you. And there was one play where Zach Taylor said there was some miscommunication about the cadence. So Amarius Mims, at the snap, he didn't move. Maybe he thought, it was going to be on 2 and they snapped it on 1, whatever it was. But the Giants player, he ran right around Amarius Mims before he could get out of his stance. So it made it look worse than probably what it should have been. But still, you would like to see Amarius Mims kind of react a little bit. If some guy is going to run past you and go hit Joe Burrow, at least get a hand on him or something. But I won't be too hard on that one. Brian Burns also had a good game for the Giants. He was number 0. He's been making plays. He's a Pro Bowl player. But he got the better of Orlando Brown Jr. a couple times at left tackle for the Bengals. But overall, not a terrible performance by the Bengals offensive line. Although Cordell Volson, he had a holding penalty on a Bengals touchdown run where he basically just tackled the defensive lineman. Wasn't really necessary, but right at the point of contact, they had Volson pulling, and he tried to get the guy, but just grabbed him, got too much jersey, wrapped his arm all the way around the defensive lineman. They had to settle for a field goal on that drive. And then later in the game, there was a play that Joe Burrow had scrambling out to the left sideline. He saw it was 3rd and long, and I was getting concerned because the Bengals were going conservative, 2 running plays again, where they were only up by 3 points. They needed to run some clock. If they could pick up 2 first downs, the Bengals basically would win the game. And they lost yards on these 2 running plays. So I was like, oh no, another situation where Zach Taylor gets overly conservative, doesn't want to throw the ball and put anything at risk. So he just run, and give it away to the other team and let them have a chance to go down and win the game on one last drive. That was how I was imagining this game ending. Worst case scenario. But luckily, Joe Burrow scrambled out to his left, found Andre Iosivas along the sideline for a nice toe tap, 2 feet in bounds for the first down. Great play. But on the play, there was an obvious hold that they didn't call on Cordell Volson, number 67 for the Bengals, where he had his arm or his hand all the way inside Brian Burns' collar for the Giants. He had a collar, handful of jersey, arm all the way extended. It couldn't be a more obvious holding call, but the refs, thankfully for the Bengals, didn't call it. I know the Giants were upset about that. Giants fans were upset about that call after the game. But hey, not every call is going to go your way. Like I said, they got Volson on the call where it brought back a Bengals touchdown. There can be holding on almost every play. They're not going to call it in every situation. Sometimes this remind me of the 4th down Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs against the Bengals where they got the pass interference on Dejon Anthony. Similar type of play where a lot of the Bengals fans were upset that the Chiefs didn't get called for holding when Patrick Mahomes scrambled out to his left. Almost similar type of situation where Bengals, probably should have gotten called for holding, but in that moment, they didn't call it. They were letting them play. There's probably a lot of plays throughout the game that could have been called for some kind of penalty, but they, for the most part, kept the flags in their pockets. Much better than, again, Monday Night Football, same stadium, but different teams, different game. More penalties than we had seen in any game so far this season with that Jets game last night or 2 nights ago. So at least there weren't a lot of penalties interrupting the Bengals game. That was a positive. But after the game, obviously everybody's excited to get back on the right track. But I think the focus is going to turn to divisional opponents, AFC North, Browns, who, by the way, just traded Amari Cooper. So the Browns are getting rid of their wide receiver 1. I didn't see, actually, let me double check. What did they trade him for? But the Browns are 1-5 at this point. They're in last place in the AFC North, even worse than the Bengals. They traded Amari Cooper to the Bills. Okay. Interesting. So still in the AFC, but out of the AFC North. Amari Cooper, 30 years old. Bills receive Amari Cooper and a 6th-round pick for a 3rd-round pick and a 7th-round selection in 2026. So some pick swaps. I don't know if there's any extra money involved. Oh, wait. Cleveland is converting. Cleveland already paid him a bunch of his salary bonus before the season started. That's why he's more attractive to trade at this point. So Cleveland's already paid him a bunch of money. So the Browns may be in tank mode at this point. That'll be something to delve into more in this preview. So we may be catching the Browns at the right time. So we can get on a little bit of a win streak. Hey, 2 games is a streak, right? So more than 1 is where the Bengals need to start. We'll break all that down in the next episode. There'll be plenty of time for that. But before we go, one last correction. I want to make a vital update to the previous episode. Gave out false information. I said Bengals were on a losing streak in primetime road games. I forgot that they broke the streak last season on Monday Night Football with Jake Browning in that Jaguars game. So that was the game where the Bengals ended their streak at 14 losses in prime time. Now they've got a new streak of, I think, 2 wins on the road in prime time. So my bad on that one. Got it wrong. So I'll try to do better research next time and not drop misinformation on you. But if you have any corrections for me, hit me up on the email, bengalbitespodcast@gmail.com. Leave me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. But we'll be back in the next episode to preview this Browns game. But until next time, I'm going to leave you with a hoo-day and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.